My friends Mitch and Lilly from ImagineeringDisney.com join me for a discussion about some of our favorite Disney movies on this Disney 100 special of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Hello and welcome to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's November 8th, 2023, and this is episode 115. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my website, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's do this thing. We've got a big of a mega episode today. I'm joined by my good friends Mitch and Lilly from ImagineeringDisney.com. They both are great friends and great Disney fans and very knowledgeable Disney fans. So they were just so kind to join me to discuss some of our personal favorites from the Walt Disney Studios. I gave them a challenge, I guess all three of us a challenge to pick three personal favorites. And these films aren't necessarily, the best films or most award-winning or whatever, but they're just three films that mean a lot to each of us. So anyway, we got a lot of movies to discuss, and again, so appreciative of Mitch and Lilly joining me for this conversation. Well, I'm so excited to have my great friends Mitch and Lilly from ImagineeringDisney.com with me again. Hi, Mitch. Hi, Lilly. How are you?
We're doing well. Great. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Stan.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. And here we are. It's the year's almost up, but we're going to do another Disney 100 episode, and I just couldn't do a Disney 100 episode without you two. So I'm so glad we were able to do this, even though it's kind of near the end of the year. But hey,
well, thanks for having us.
Better late than never. Well, thank you so much for being here. So, well, the three of us talked about doing was talking about like kind of our top three favorite Disney films, and it's hard to pick, and there are probably more, but we narrowed it down to three each. And so we're gonna be talking about I think some great Disney films, and I really just look forward to hearing your picks and why you picked them. So Lilly, why don't we start with you? What is and I don't think these three picks that we picked are necessarily ranked, right?
Yeah.
It's just like three of our favorites. So we'll just start with you, Lilly. And what was what's one of your top three picks of Disney movies that you love?
Well, so here was interesting about this as a process, because I mean, of course, I have opinions about what are the greatest Disney films of all time. And there's so many arguments to be made there about which is the best film that Disney has ever made. But when I started seeing your guys' picks, I was like, I started seeing like, what are the films that I feel that are personal for me, that feel nostalgic for me, instead of like necessarily like the best animation or the best storyline or, whatever. And so that's how I ended up choosing the three that I went with. So the first one is Alice in Wonderland. Obviously the original Alice in Wonderland.
What? Not the
no,
not Johnny Depp.
CGI.
No Johnny Depp for me. Thanks.
We're talking 1951.
We're talking 1951. Catherine Beaumont, Edwin. I love this film. I think that it's one of the more unique Disney films. Of course, Walt loved Alice. He loved the story of Alice. It's one of the things that he played around with when he was trying to figure out animation and live action together. And so there feels like there's
pre Mickey Mouse.
Yes. And so it feels like there's that piece of history in it for me, but I also just love it as a film. It's one of those that I just imagined myself as Alice hundreds of times when I was playing as a child. I probably sat in a field of flowers and sang that song that she sings a million times. I had a little cat when I was growing up. And so there's just so many things that I felt such a kinship towards Alice. I also loved the book. I read the book, both Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, probably, multiple times as a child. And so I was just in love with this story. I also feel like it's unique in how many short songs that it has and how many interesting storylines that have been weaved together in the story. And so I also love the script. I think that it's one of the most clever scripts, and my sister and I quote this movie all the time.
It's so zany, right? It's wacky, kind of fun.
Yes, that whole scene, if you really want to know, he went that way. Which way that, who did the white rabbit? I mean, we know that whole scene word for word, and we repeat it all the time. So I just think it has great characters, even just like the little scenes, like making fun of the caucus races and like all of the little things that they slide in there. I just think it's so clever. I think it's fun. I think it's timeless.
Not to mention the voices. I mean, the voice acting is...
They're great. They're so great.
Sterling Holloway, Ed Wynn. I mean, like you said, Catherine Beaumont. Really good cast.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought that they did a really good job of taking, the very interesting parts of the book, like the Jabberwocky poem, which is so famous from Lewis Carroll, and turning that into like the Cheshire Cat's song. Like there's so many things about it that I think are so interesting and just really well done.
For me, this is kind of nerdy, but the color palette on this film is unmatched. It's very colorful, but not like in a irresponsible way. They were very deliberate in their color, and so each scene you notice that the characters have their own color palette, and the background has their own kind of design in that kind of Mary Blair style. It's got such a visual appeal. And as kind of a nerd of animation, the animation mixed with the voice acting, mixed with the music, it's really quite a phenomenal film.
I'm with you both. It's a visual delight. The story, or kind of the weirdness of the story, isn't necessarily my favorite, but it's overtaken by how fantastic the animation is, how clever everything is. It's the Mad Tea Party sequence. It's brilliant. I never get tired of it. The whole birthday song, and just how fun that is, how colorful, that Mary Blair influence on it, and just I don't know. I just feel like the 50s, between Cinderella and kind of Sleeping Beauty. I just don't know how you beat the animation that Disney was creating during that time period.
Walt's Night Old Men are working on these. They haven't devoted too much of their efforts to the theme parks yet. I mean, that's like in the process. But and speaking of theme parks, one of my favorite attractions at Disneyland is the Alice in Wonderland ride. Yeah. And then right outside of that, you've got the Mad Tea Party, the teacups, and that attraction. And it's one that gets better and better, I think, with time. I mean, they update it in the right ways. Mm-hmm. And man, just that it's kind of a perfect film for a dark ride. Like it sets the stage so perfectly. How can you not have a dark ride of Alice in Wonderland? And it's a shame that the other parks don't do that, but luckily Disneyland still has theirs.
Yeah,
they really aced the dark ride, didn't they? For I think for Alice in Wonderland, because you really feel like you're in the film. I think,
yeah.
And also the story works great for it. The whole thing. I love it. The only sadness I have, and it's minor, but I still wish that OSHA would have let them keep
outdoor. I was going to say the same thing. Yes.
The descent.
Didn't they changed it? They made it. It's like less noticeable.
I think that the track is the same, but they like built these little barriers, all the way around it, so you don't. Or did they completely redo it? Because
they built the little walls around it, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but I think that they modified.
So fun. You kind of felt like you were going to go off the edge.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, look, safety's more important.
No, it's not. It's really not. Come on.
They wreck a ride.
A couple of people fall off and die. That's their own fault. I mean,
that's right. Whatever.
Yeah, come on. But you're sitting in the caterpillar, the ride vehicle.
Oh, the ride vehicle.
I know this is about the film and not the park.
I love the caterpillar as a character. I love that whole scene. It's so great.
Yeah. Who are you? I mean, it's so great.
And I love how I love Alice as she just navigates this crazy world.
The insanity. Yeah,
she's like trying to find herself and stand up for herself with this scene with this caterpillar, but she's also trying to be, a good girl and recite her poem. And, I mean, she's such a sweet, interesting character. I especially love this scene where she grows big and she has the bird's nest in her headband, and the bird is, calling her a serpent, and she's like, but I'm not a serpent. And she's like, oh yes, then what are you? And she's trying to like negotiate with this bird, and she's just like, well, I'm a little girl, but she
goes along with it, right? I love her personality, and I love the design of Alice, and the fact that she just kind of goes along with the adventures. Like, she's a fish out of water, but at the same time she's like embracing it in a way that's like, it's just really charming, right? I just really like how she interacts with all the things that confront her.
Yes, and I give myself very good advice. She's tried her sincerest efforts this entire movie, and then she just sings this song where she's like, well, I guess I got myself here. It's just great. I love it.
Thank you. Outstanding. All right, Mitch.
All right. My first film that I chose, and this goes back to my childhood, is 1957's Old Yeller. And Old Yeller, I mean, it's known for its sad ending, of course, but it's really just got a lot of heart. I loved it as a small child because it's about this family. It's a period piece. It's 1800s. It's on a farm. The father leaves at the beginning of the picture to go on a cattle drive with the other men of the area. And so left behind for a couple months are the wife, the teenage son, and then the little boy son, the son that's 6 years old. And the cast is unbeatable. Tommy Kirk plays Travis. He's in all the Disney films, along with Kevin Corcoran, who plays Arliss, who's like the little boy. And then Dorothy McGuire plays the mother. Fess Parker plays the father. You see him again at the end of the film. You've got Chuck Connors, you've got Jeff York. You have all these really cool characters. You've got a lot of animals. So basically the story is, and we don't need to rehash the whole story, but you've got this family living in a remote area in Texas, 18-something. Dad's gone. And we're introduced to Old Yeller, this dog, right? This yellow-haired, floppy-eared dog who runs through their farm chasing a rabbit, who spooks all the animals, who makes a big mess, big chaos. And so immediately we know that Old Yeller is, you see a little bit of his personality, right? And so immediately Tommy Kirk, who's the teenage son, hates him, doesn't want him, wants to shoot him, wants to get him out of there, doesn't want anything to do with this dog. But the younger brother just loves this dog. And I really related to that younger brother when I was a kid. He's like catching snakes and horned toads and fish and all these different things. And then this dog comes into his life and he's just in love with Old Yeller immediately. And so Old Yeller eventually works his way into the hearts of all the family members. And then there's that tragic ending where he contracts hydrophobia, the disease that's kind of going around, something like rabies. And they know they have to, shoot him, which is super sad and super depressing. However, as a whole, the story and the film is just heartwarming.
It's a classic. I really love that you picked this one, Mitch, because I remember seeing it as a child too, and I remember loving it, but then also like dreading it because it's so sad.
Yeah,
it's so heartbreaking when Old Yeller meets its fate. But I'm glad you brought up the cast too, because it's a terrific cast. Tommy Kirk and Kevin Corcoran, are these kind of classic Disney actors, right? They made a bunch of films,
right? And then together with Dorothy McGuire, the mother, those three are in Swiss Family Robinson together as mother and two sons, and then they have the father and the other son. But yeah, great little trio that we get in this film.
Well, and also it was directed by Robert Stevenson, who directed Mary Poppins, for the studio. And, and some other the Shaggy. I think he directed the Shaggy Dog. He directed a bunch of stuff for Disney, in the 60s and 70s.
Right,
Blackbird's Ghost. I think the original Love Bug. Anyway.
Really? Yeah. I mean, just it's that era where they have all these great writers, directors, producers. Disney really had just kind of this dream team of actors and cast members and crew members, and it just came together really nicely because of that. And then the book it was also based on is lends to it. One thing I wanted to mention was that Old Yeller does die. Travis does have to shoot him. He's tied up.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. They put him in the corn crib, like a shed out back, where they could observe his behavior. And if he doesn't have any of the symptoms of this thing going around, then they'll let him out. But he really does have all the foaming at the mouth and the he's just not himself. Poor Old Yeller is just not himself. And but they do find out that Old Yeller has fathered a litter of puppies, and they get the pick of the litter, and it's like this little mini Old Yeller that's the cutest little puppy in the world, and so like his legacy does go on, it does move on, and so there is kind of a happy ending after the like really sad part, and overall it warms your heart. It's a very, very touching story.
Well, and I love, so this was the only one of any of your lists that when I saw it, I was like, huh, okay. Like, I don't know that I saw that one coming.
I didn't
say. So I actually rewatched it because I was like, okay, I've never actually watched it as an adult. I only remember as a child. Yeah, I mean, it's just this great story about a dog, and then he dies in the end, and it's so sad.
It's so sad.
And so I actually watched it with my new puppy, my golden retriever.
He was very cute, by the way.
He actually watched it. Yeah, he was
cute.
He was worried at the hog part.
Your little puppy didn't question my choice.
Oh no, he knew. He knew.
So you watched it as an adult after a long time not watching it. What did you think?
Of course, this story about this dog, and of course the dog does everything, and he's amazing, and he saves them from the bear and the hogs and all the things, and the wolf at the end. But what kind of like snuck up on me was Travis's like journey into manhood.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really sweet storyline where, and I actually for the time, especially, I mean, of course there's, many things that, anyone could argue about in terms of gender roles and all those things, but, especially for the time. 50s. As to, I actually didn't feel like it was overly that way, where Travis was allowed to be scared and still say, yeah, like that does scare me a little bit, but like, I'm going to do it, and him sort of coming into his own to the point where he makes the decision even to be the person to kill Old Yeller and to be able to like help him move past this sickness and
take ownership of the situation. Yeah.
And I love when his dad comes back and he kind of says it and he's like, forget about it, and Travis is like, I don't think I can do that. And then I love that the dad restates and says, maybe that's not what I mean, but what I mean is like, maybe there's bad things and there's good things. And, maybe we can look for the things that replace the bad, which I just thought was a great message, and that's the thing that kind of turns him back to Little Yeller. But I just thought it was a sweet story of him sort of finding himself and this dog being the thing that helps him do that.
Yeah, it really is. And you can take a lot out of away from that. Definitely. I think each character has their own little journey, and Old Yeller plays a part in all of their little journeys. The
Mhm.
mother, you mentioned the mother is a great character. She's strong. She's not helpless. She's very capable. She doesn't want her husband to go, but she makes the best of it, and you can tell she's been a great mother to these boys, and is really fair with them. You've got a couple of other characters that come in along the way. One of my favorite scenes as a kid, and even now, is when Chuck Connors comes in, and he's like this typical like manly cowboy guy, and it turns out he's the owner of Old Yeller. He's like the rightful owner, and this thieving dog who's been kind of escaping and stealing, eggs from houses and stuff. This guy immediately, he wants the Old Yeller back, and he immediately knows it's his dog, and they recognize each other. And the family doesn't want to give up Old Yeller, but they know they need to, because this is Bern Sanderson, or Chuck Connors plays Bern Sanderson. This is his dog, and he's about ready to leave. And the younger brother, Kevin Corcoran, he starts throwing a fit, and he starts throwing rocks, and just loses his mind, because you can't steal my dog. Don't take my dog. That's my dog. And the charming interaction that they have between Chuck Connors and Kevin Corcoran is, hey, and I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but it's basically like, I see that horn toad in your pocket. I've never seen a finer one. What if we made a trade? What if we talk about trading? But hey, this isn't a fair trade, because that dog is a lot bigger than this little horn toad. And he says, do you think you can convince your mother to cook me a home cooked meal? I haven't had one in a long time. And little Arliss turns around and says, will you feed him, mama? And she says, of course I will. And so really, yeah, Chuck Connors' character does not have, this is not in his best interest to give up this dog, but he sees that the family needs the dog. The dog is a big benefit, and he sees that emotional attachment that they have to the dog. So there are a lot of little tiny moments like that are just really charming, and just like rewatchable. It's something I could watch over and over again. And I did as a kid. That was one of our few VHS tapes back in the early 80s when VHS technology was new, and the tapes were sparse, and there weren't a lot of, we recorded this stuff off of TV half the time. And so you'd have to watch the same movie over and over again in that time period, because there wasn't anything on demand, and there weren't that many channels on TV. And so it's something that we rewatched repeatedly. In fact, all three of my films that I chose are like that. They fit that category.
I don't wish to get too preachy on this, but one of the things that I actually admire about Old Yeller, I kind of feel the same way like with Bambi, in that, everybody, myself included, remembers the very traumatic event that happens in the film. But it's this really, this coming of age story arc, I think is important. And not wanting to put thoughts into Walt Disney's head, but I kind of feel like that was something that seemed like it was an important theme to him, that he'd be willing to make a film about this. And even though it presents something that's really hard, it's life, as we all can attest to. And, from our more adult perspective, but our vantage point. But anyway, that's something that I appreciated about the film as an adult that I did. And I'm so glad also, Mitch, that you brought up the puppy at the end, because that's hopeful, and also like real life, that's part of what goes on. So,
and one quick thing before we go to the next movie is that a memory of mine. I grew up in Central California, and not far from where we lived, Fess Parker had his winery there.
Yes,
and so he lived there for like throughout my life until he passed. And my father's office was really close to where Fess Parker lived, and Fess Parker would go to this one little restaurant quite often for lunch. And so when we would go to my dad's office, like we go to work with him, he would take us to that restaurant so that we might be able to see Fess Parker, and we would often be at the table right next to him in this little restaurant, and we would always just kind of stare at him. Oh, that's the dad from Old Yeller. That's that's Davy Crockett. I
love it.
And so I don't know. It's meaningful to me for a lot of different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's just something I like to enjoy watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great pick, Mitch. Great film. And again, just from a great era, I think, of, Disney filmmaking too.
Right.
So my first pick is Beauty and the Beast, the 1991 animated film.
Yes.
And it's definitely at the top of my list of, films from Disney feature animation, or, Walt Disney Animation Studios that I love. And I've seen it a bazillion times, and I'll probably see it a bazillion times more. I just think it's, again, thank goodness that Disney animation got revived, right?
Yeah.
At that time period, and it's just I think it's just a perfect film. It's such a beautiful retelling of it. I think it's timeless. The animation's great, voice talent's great, and I never tire of it. And also, I think I happen to know somebody who's a friend of Belle.
Oh yeah.
Well said, Stan. Well said.
What he means is Lily was
Mitch,
Belle
Mitch!
at Walt Disney World. Now, we don't say friends with Belle because that's confusing and misleading. She was Belle. She played Belle. She portrayed Belle.
Stan understands these things, Mitch. He understands magic.
Magic.
It's ridiculous. She put on the Belle costume, the wig, and everything else, and spoke as if she was Belle, and performed and sang
Mitch
and met children
killer.
as Belle.
Wonder you've ever worked at the parks. You don't understand.
I'm telling you, it's
what was it like to be friends with Belle, Lily?
Oh, gee.
Amazing. I mean, Belle is a great character, right? I mean, she's kind of the quintessential, she's a princess, but she's thoughtful, but she's smart. She doesn't, Gaston's antics doesn't get by her for a second. She's supportive of her dad. She, comes into this castle where she's very willing to like hold her own, and yet she has her own softness as well. I mean, she's just got a really wide range. So yeah, she's a fun character to be friends with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this movie, again, as I said, I pretty much love everything about it, but thematically, it really is. I think it resonates. That whole, initially, or falling in love with someone, who they really are, rather than how they look, and just how ultimately how romantic and wonderful it is. And I always get choked up at the end when the last pedal drops, and
Yes.
she says "I love you," and that whole transformation scene, I think, is just kind of truly Disney magic.
You mentioned, Stan, it's kind of the perfect animated film, and I think it really is. I mean, it's quite flawless, I would say, and which is almost shocking considering the time that it was made. I mean, it had followed a period of films that were struggling in an animation department that struggled since Walt's death, some 15 years earlier, and or more, 25 years earlier or whatever. And but they started to get the groove back. They started to make, and if you've ever seen the movie Waking Sleeping Beauty, that is great. If you like Little Mermaid, which you should, of course, and Beauty and the Beast, which you should, because they're both fantastic, and Aladdin and everything. Watch Waking Sleeping Beauty, because it's a documentary of that time period where they're making these films and they're bringing animation back, right, in this amazing way.
Well, and do you remember the ballroom scene just being...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was animation like we had never seen it before. Like just the 360 feeling of, you know, them walking into that ballroom and, you know, the new technology and everything. It was just so cool. It was just, I remember, you know, even as a kid seeing that and just being like, wow, this looks
Well, they use a little bit of computer
cool.
animation, but it doesn't look like computer animation. It looks like kind of hand-drawn traditional animation, but aided by computers who can, like the chandelier and just the
Yes.
camera movements and everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just really pretty. They also referenced Sleeping Beauty, I believe, when they did the dancing sequences. They kind of like traced
in that final sequence, right? It seems like it's
some reused animation there, but in a good way and not in a bad way at all, and just a smart way. But yeah, the film had the complete package in terms of acting and visuals and animation, background design, beautiful. The music, just unreal.
Yeah, you know, a shout out to Alan Menken and to Howard Ashman.
Yes.
And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Howard Ashman died just before the release of Beauty and the Beast, and it's dedicated to him. And they brought such a fresh sensibility, because that's, I think, what really made The Little Mermaid shine too, was their incredibly clever songs.
Yeah, and they were this duo from Broadway or off Broadway, right?
Yeah.
They were brought in by Michael Eisner and others, and really kind of brought life back into the animation program, which was much needed. And
it was needed.
It was a really great. What do they call it? The second
golden age, like the Disney Renaissance.
Yeah,
golden age is what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all these
got a few names, I guess.
Names, yeah.
Yeah, and then they went through another slump after that, which is sad. But for those few years, we had some really great films.
Yeah, they did. I mean, you know, starting with The Little Mermaid. I mean, what a string, you know. All the way, I think up through kind of Mulan or Tarzan. You know.
Yeah.
But Beauty and the Beast in particular, I mean, there's a reason it was a very well-performing Broadway musical. Probably one of the better live action remakes. In fact, of the live action remakes, I feel like that was the one where they basically didn't change anything, because it, even, you know, frame for frame, in some cases, it's like, well,
they can improve.
It was already good.
Yeah.
So there was a few questions that went unanswered, like how did she get Beast back on that horse, that the live action like answered. Okay, why is it winter for some reason? Okay, they answered those questions. But other
did they really?
than that, you know,
I don't remember that. How did she get him on the horse?
She
Magic?
They actually show her like getting him on her shoulder and like putting him on the horse or something like that.
I don't remember that.
Like complete the scene with that.
Interesting.
My only gripe with the or one of my main gripes about the live action, even though, you know, that it was made in the first place, that's first gripe number one. But I think Emma Watson is darling and a great actress, but I wish they had hired someone who could sing.
Like Lily?
Emma Watson's auto tune like ticks me off. Like, but I digress.
I actually agree with that. Yeah, I think she wasn't the right fit for it, and she had quite a few opinions about Disney princesses. That some of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I have a hard time with, because you know, I have a hard time with people who like bash Disney, but then they're like in Disney films. And I'm like, what's going on?
We can bash Disney, not you.
There's all that uproar, you know, with Rachel Zegler's, you know, stuff. Have you seen
Snow White? Yeah,
comments about Snow White? Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you, kind of thing.
Oh, I know, and rip on the OG, you know, or the and sure, product of her time, you know, or the film's a product of its time. But anyway.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that I always remember about Beauty and the Beast was, do you remember the old animation tour at Disney MGM Studios in Florida?
Yeah, I remember that was the best thing ever.
I went through back in the day, you go through the tour and you would look down through glass windows into like what looked like a bunch of animators.
Yeah,
and I know some of that was kind of faked a little bit, but it gave the illusion that they were producing films. In that building, they actually did produce entire films. Like Mulan was like the first one that built completely in that building, I believe. Anyway, but they worked on all these other previous films partially. They would like get some of the some of the scenes and stuff were sent to Florida from California. Anyway, I remember looking down into this the first time I'm at Disney MGM Studios, pretty new, looking down, and there's this guy painting background art, big, wide pieces of paper, and he's hand painting. And I said, that looks like a library, little books that he was painting by hand.
Oh my goodness.
And it was unreal. I mean, I just could not, I didn't want to leave as a little boy looking down saying, this is going to be in a film. And lo and behold, a few months later, when the film released, I was watching it for that scene, and there it was. And it was it's just that amazing little connection. Now it's what, a bathroom or something?
Yeah, it's a bathroom and like
storage,
whatever they use that building for. Yeah.
Gosh.
And I guess there's like a Star Wars area too, like Star Wars meet and greet, and part of where that tour was.
Sure, why not? I mean, just do whatever. Just sacred hallowed ground that made all sorts of animated.
Yeah,
I got trained. I worked for the department that was in that building, and I worked in there for a while, and it was we like worked on the old animation desks. We were doing drawings and stuff, and the old animation library was left behind for us, for this Disney design group I worked for. And I remember like the desk that I was drawing on had like little kind of like, it was a little bit messed up with paint, like paint had overspilled, and you could see brush strokes and stuff from like the edge of the paper. Knowing that table and those, the supplies that we had in our little library contributed to all these different films was just very, very important. And next thing you know, management says, oh, we want this space. And they just cleared it all out, gutted it, and kind of moved in as a typical office building, which was so sad because it was such an important extension of the Disney feature animation studios in California.
Yeah, that creative space and history.
All the
so cool. You got to be in there though, Mitch.
What's that?
That is cool. And then they had animation desks still in there.
Yeah, I went on a tour of it one time, like when I first started at Disney, and then a couple years later, I applied for a job for the Disney design group that was in there, and I was very pleased and shocked to get the job. And then the training process was a few weeks in the building on that equipment, and then we had full access to that library, the animation library, reference library, where they had all the maquettes, all the little little sculptures, all this stuff that animation had left behind when they shut down the animation department a couple of years earlier. But all the hallways had like the cool pictures and original artwork, and it was just really kind of the leftover animation program that was handed over to Disney Design Group, who was responsible for designing character artwork for merchandise and parks and other things similar, but they weren't doing films.
Okay. What I want to know is, Mitch, was there any art from Lilo and Stitch? Was there some Stitch? Was there some Stitch stuff?
There was Stitch stuff, I'm sure.
Like everywhere.
Not too much. That was all reserved for Tomorrowland, because why have a good Tomorrowland when you can just cover it in Stitch?
Well, because I think wasn't Lilo and Stitch a film that was also mostly made there at the Florida studio? Yeah. Anyway, sorry. That's just me being a jerk.
We're right there with you.
All right, Lily, we are back to you. What is your next pick?
Okay, my next pick is The Rocketeer. Which I also just rewatched again because I do love that movie. And even watching it recently, I am like, yes, this movie still holds up for me. It is so cheesy and is so far-fetched and all of the things. And also I love it. I just think it's such a great movie. It's, first of all, I love Jennifer Connelly. If I could have anyone's career, it would be hers.
Top Gun.
All of it, everything. Labyrinth, yes. Even the Hulk. I would even do the Hulk. You know?
Oh yeah.
Anyways, I think that the just the idea of this great relationship, boyfriend girlfriend. They're trying to help each other, but they also kind of don't understand each other sometimes and miss the mark sometimes, but they really do care about each other. So their story is kind of navigating through this story of this rocket and how they happen upon it and all the different groups that get involved and, the the actor and the mobsters, and I think it's great, and it's good guys against Nazis. Like, who doesn't hate Nazis? Like, they're the
Right, yeah.
ultimate bad guy. The end where it's this cheesy shot of him firing the rocket off in front of a American flag while he flies up to go fight the Nazis in the end. Like, I don't know. I just think that the whole thing is really great. It's an American story. It's a superhero story. It's a love story.
It's a comic book story, but
it's a comic book story. It's
not too
all
comic
the
booky.
things.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's pretty timeless, and I, again, kind of having grown up with that film, I imagined myself as Jennifer Connelly, and also that restaurant. I always like dreamed about, like, someday I'm going to open a restaurant just like that,
that nightclub kind of, yeah.
Yes, with the jazz singer and the whole thing. I just love it. So I just think it's classic. I think it's timeless. Every time someone makes one of our mutual friends just made a Rocketeer costume.
Really?
That they post on Facebook. Yeah, why?
Cool.
Who went to Pixar with us? Jason?
Oh, yeah.
So cool, yeah.
Yes, you have to look it up on Facebook. It's very good. So, every time I see one, it just makes me happy because I'm like, there's someone out there who loved this movie as much as me that would take the time to, like, make a costume.
And it's an obscure costume because a lot of people don't even recognize what it is. But everybody who knows Rocketeer loves Rocketeer, right?
Yeah. Like, if you know
you're
it,
going to get like no response from everybody, and then all of a sudden somebody's going to recognize you and go, "Whoa, that is a great costume!" Like that, I'm sure that's going to be his experience, right? Or was his experience.
Totally.
This is such a great pick, Lily. I'll go ahead. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stan. I just had a little story, but
no, please. After you.
So rewind to 1989, 1990. I'm in elementary school, and this article in the newspaper, my dad pulls out. He shows us, hey, they're looking for extras for a new Disney production going to be filmed in our town. And it says that they're looking for children. They'll have to miss up to 2 weeks of school to be extras in this new Disney picture. I'm sure I've told you guys this story.
No, I don't know this story.
And so we begged and begged and begged, and my parents said, no, we're not going to miss any school. And we went to school, and all the other kids had begged their parents, and word got around that they're going to be looking for kids to be extras. And pretty much all the kids' parents said, no way, we're not going to let you miss school at all. But a couple of the kids at school, their parents did let them do it. Turns out it was the Rocketeer being filmed 1.9 miles away from our elementary school.
No!
Oh, wow.
Amazing!
So, I've never told you this?
No, you never have.
I know the story, Mitch.
So I looked on the map before, in preparation for this episode. I was like, how close were we to it was the Santa Maria, California airport. They filmed the majority of the movie. And
was that like his home airport, that home base?
Yeah, where they do the air show and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that set work is still there, and it's turned into a museum, like his shop, where he's like, where they find the jetpack and everything. That's all still there, and they've turned it into a museum. I have not been to the museum, but I'd love to go back. I haven't lived there in a while. I know, right? And so some of the kids we can see in the air show audience, like in the bleachers and stuff, kind of waving flags and stuff, and wearing the old-timey clothes. But you won't see me, sadly. And
did you recognize anybody in it, Mitch?
Yeah, there were like kids like from our school and school district that were in it. Not. And when I brought it up to my parents like not too long ago, they had zero sympathy. Like, oh wow, kind of miss school. I'm like, come on, what would I have remembered from those 2 weeks of school? But I could have like a part in this film.
Timeless, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right? Now the only like kind of okay thing that happened out of all this, it's very heartbreaking still, of course, but I'm emotionally damaged. However, I do remember when they were filming all the cool old airplanes for specifically the air show. They would fly over our school, like the playground. It was close enough that they were circling around our neighborhood multiple times for multiple days. So we would stand there and look up and see these cool old planes. But we couldn't, we didn't get on set or anything. And then one last thing, some people, some friends of ours that lived kind of the next neighborhood over, and who we spent a lot of time with, they told us that there's a scene where they're like driving fast through these trees, like a forest that was right next to their house. There's a small patch of a bunch of eucalyptus trees between this family's house and the airport, and it's not very big. And they said, yeah, that the little thing that we'd go play around in and run around in, that's where they filmed a couple of different scenes. So we got to see and hear a lot of like kind of secondhand experiences of the film, but never any firsthand experiences, sadly, because it is a great film. It's a wonderful film, and that's my memory of it.
Yeah,
that is the best story.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. I want to go check that out, because I figured that was filmed in somewhere kind of in Central California. Given just the way that things looked around that airport.
It's just our small town, and we had a very small airport, and most of the airport was dirt and field, and like my buddy would race go-karts on kind of that where they filmed it. They'd had like a little dirt track for go-karts, and it was right down the street, literally. And the pain that we felt for knowing that it was being produced that whole summer, or that whole like few months,
right?
And we couldn't be a part of it.
And you didn't get to be a part of it.
I know, it's tragic.
That is the best story. This is such a great pick, Lily. There's so much stuff I love about this movie, pretty much like everything. Directed by Joe Johnson. Joe was an effects person at Lucasfilm. At the beginning of his career, he worked on all 3 of the original Star Wars trilogy films.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
And then he directed a bunch of cool stuff like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Jumanji.
Yeah.
And Jurassic Park 3, but I don't want to bring that up because that was horrible. but Captain America, the very first one, Captain America, the first Avenger. Yeah. Anyway, but I digress. But I just think he has this great sensibility, about like vintage stuff, because you really feel like you're in that time period. I think that it's so effective.
Yeah. Howard Hughes and all that. Yeah.
The music's so great in it.
Howard Hughes is.
Yeah.
Howard Hughes is a character. Ed Wynn is or W.C. Fields, I mean.
Yes. It's just so cool how they interweave like these actual people, to this fictional story. And the art direction. So that costume, what's cooler than that helmet, and that leather jacket that he's got.
The design
even the rocket pack, the jet pack.
Yes. Oh, the whole costume is amazing.
Well, and I adore the poster. A really cool movie poster.
Yes,
they made for it.
It doesn't get enough credit, the film, at all.
It's a great pick, Lily.
Great pick.
Really, really a cool film. Yeah. I recently rewatched it too, and I just kind of fell in love with it all over again. I also love how they filmed it at that Frank Lloyd Wright designed home in Los Angeles, that Annis house that's got all that.
Love that
that's
house.
Where Timothy Dalton's character lives.
Uh-huh.
With all those cool concrete bricks.
Yes. Yeah, very cool.
That house is
the Enos house or the Ennis house?
Yeah, Enos or Ennis house, or however you say it. It's currently it's got a new owner, and somebody's like refurbishing it. Hopefully that they'll open it up.
Have you been to it before, or seen it, or driven by it?
I think I've driven past it maybe a while back, but I've never been in, and it hasn't been open. It's just had private ownership, and
it's just cool that they chose that. Like it's
and they got to film it in there.
That Frank Lloyd Wright Aztec sort of simple rich man billionaire sort of.
It has just this perfect vibe, I think, for that time period. And do you think that nightclub was probably just a soundstage, wasn't it? That restaurant.
Probably. To be real, like someday I'm going to go to the South Seas, and there's going to be a big seashell that is going to open up, and there's going to be this amazing jazz singer that's going to walk out.
And who played the?
We got to rebuild it.
The South Seas singer.
Yes,
Melora Hardin.
Yeah, Melora Hardin, who
we know from most recently The Office.
The Office, but
Jan.
she was a child actor in the North Avenue Irregulars. The
Was she?
that Disney pick. She was in that. Yeah,
Huh.
I think she was one of Ed Herman's character's kids.
She was also in the Little House on the Prairie when she was.
Oh, that's right.
That is so interesting. I did not know that.
Then you've got what's his name? The guy that plays Howard Hughes. He's on Lost.
All right.
Major character on Lost. What's his name?
Yes. That character. That's good.
Overall, it just has a lot of really great actors that played great parts, and it's just a great movie that so many people don't appreciate or even know about. And if they do take the time to watch it, I think everybody would like it if they just sat down and paid attention to it.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out. It's on Disney Plus. Totally worth it. Well, and also shout out to Alan Arkin, who plays
Peavy.
Yeah, the sidekick to Cliff / the Rocketeer, Billy Campbell's character. Alan Arkin recently died, and that was a loss.
Right.
In fact, tonight, as we're recording this, they're doing a tribute to him on Turner Classic Movies. Although they didn't pick The Rocketeer as one of the films, like rude.
Oh, come on.
Well, here's another fun fact, since we're full of fun facts today. I actually met Paul Sorvino.
No way, you did.
He's the mobster.
Really?
Yes.
He just died a few months ago, right? Like last year?
Seems like he recently died too.
When did you meet him and where?
I met him when I worked at Walt Disney World, when I was friends with Mary Poppins.
Oh, when you played Mary Poppins?
You were friends with everybody.
He came to a restaurant that Mary Poppins was also visiting, and came and took pictures with his family. And he
which restaurant?
In the castle.
Oh,
in the
royal table, or
yes, the royal table that's like on the top of Cinderella's castle. He was there with his daughter and granddaughter, and Mira, and I took a picture with Mira and her daughter, and he was like, I know Julie Andrews.
What? You said that? That's awesome. No way.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So there you go. There's a little fun fact.
I love it.
He didn't want a picture with Mary Poppins, just for the record.
He did or did not?
He did not.
He did not?
No.
Your friend Mary Poppins was probably disappointed.
I bet she was sad about that.
She's cool. Paul can do whatever he wants to do.
For those of you confused by Lily's description of that encounter, it was Lily that played Mary Poppins who met Paul Sorvino. It wasn't Lily's friend. There was no friend involved. Lily was there. You make it sound like you were not even there. But you were the person that was there meeting this other person. That's what I'm talking about. My wife also was friends with characters, and it's just confusing. And so I'm always the one having to clarify when people are confused. Friend with, come on.
Bring us all to Earth.
You have to destroy all the magic. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
Mitch, it was John Locke is the character from Lost.
John Locke, yeah.
Yeah, that it's
Terry O'Quinn.
Terry O'Quinn, yeah.
Oh, man.
Terry O'Quinn played, who was Howard Hughes in The Rocketeer. Yeah, awesome.
So cool.
Well, what a great pick. All right, Mitch, what's your next pick?
My next one is the 1961 classic, The Parent Trap.
I love that movie.
That is such an outstanding movie.
So it's been remade in the 90s.
90s, Lindsay Lohan, right?
We're not talking about that one. The original, the only one in my opinion, is one of my top. It's in my top 5 and has been in my top 5 favorite films of all time, not just Disney films of all time, top 3 of all time, really, for my whole life. The Parent Trap stars Hayley Mills and Hayley Mills. Hayley Mills, the actress, portrays 2 identical twin sisters who are not aware of the other. They were, their parents got divorced at when the girls were young. Mom took one, dad took the other, and they never spoke of the twin And then when they go to girls' camp, like this summer camp, when they're teenagers or like preteens, they run into each other and they see that they are identical and they don't like each other. They don't like that they have the same face and they look the same. They feud, they fight, they prank each other, and as their punishment, the people at the camp make them live together. They bunk together. They eat together. They have to do everything together, and they end up in the process figuring things out. They have the same birthday. They figure out that they are identical twins, and they decide they're going to get their parents back together because neither one of them is remarried. They're going to do the ultimate switcheroo. They're going to switch places when summer camp ends, and they're going to eventually get mom and dad back together to make the switch, back to normal. And then mom and dad will fall in love together once again as they see each other for the first time in all these years. And they pull it off beautifully. It's fun, charming, wonderful film. Great cast. Another film with a great cast. I think all of our films that we've chosen have really great casts. But Brian Keith and Maureen O'Hara, it's Charles Ruggles. It's multiple people who play multiple great roles, great characters. And it's fun and funny. And the backdrop is really great. You've got the first act is at the summer camp, and it's at a lake up in the hills, up in the mountains and pine trees, and these cool cabin tent sort of things that they live in, and all of their kind of scheming, their plans to live in each other's shoes, and then and then they go into each other's lives. One goes to Boston, and you see that the mom and the grandparents living this kind of rich lifestyle in fancy Boston. And then you've got the dad who lives on a ranch in this great ranch house in California. And it's just this, another perfect film that's almost flawless.
Agreed.
It's great. I also think that it is one of the best opening credits.
Oh, yeah.
I love those.
Stop motion?
Yes, it's so good. Then your family tree's gonna stop.
Sherman Brothers song.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
It's so great. The Walt Disney Archives, when I was there on a tour, they had some of those
the dolls?
Oh, they did.
That's awesome.
On display, from the opening credits, which I was just
cool.
geeking out.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Lily, because I love the opening too.
It was like some of the animators were pulled over to do that, I believe. Like some of the famous
like
animators.
Justice and some
NCO and yeah.
Super cool. That ranch house, Brian Keith's ranch house. I think from the first time I saw that film, I always dream. I wish that was my house. It's like it's just like the coolest.
Yes,
me too. Thing. And I don't know if it was a set or what, but I just I've always loved it.
Sadly, it was not real. You would hope that it was somebody's house that they rented, but it was a set, and the exterior was kind of like this adobe Southwestern kind of unassuming front ranch house style. With the lake in front of it. But then when you go inside, it had cool tile and cool materials everywhere and great furniture and this mid-century modern artwork on the wall. And one thing I loved about it, Stan, was it had really cool stairs and then a little kind of sort of bridge crossing over to another part of the house, and that courtyard in the back with the big trees and that cool kitchen. And it was very, it had doors leading to other rooms that were not super usual. You wouldn't see that every day. And the color scheme, everything was really, really just California, 1950s, mid-century, with kind of Spanish influence, but masculine. They even make reference to it, it's a little masculine, right? You could use a woman's touch. Because Brian Keith, that's his home. It's been his home for a long time. And he's just this manly man who likes to camp and ride horses and stuff. So,
what Mitch is not telling you is that he actually has taken screenshots of every inch of that house, and it has figured out how he would recreate it someday. So I feel confident that at some point that house will in fact be built as an actual house, and Mitch will be living in it.
Mitch, I hope you'll have me over for dinner because I want to hang out.
You're welcome to come over anytime you want.
I love
my Brian Keith house.
That we all love that house.
It was tricky though to kind of like figure out how it all laid out, because you'd see like the dad's bathroom, and which is really cool too, and like the girls' room, and the like bridge outside that was like open air, like but covered, and then connect to the patio and the piano, and all. I mean, it's like just so many cool things. If you haven't seen the film, go watch and just pause it when they take you around the house. It's fantastic. It's unparalleled, really, and it's not like fancy, which isn't my taste, and I think that's why Stan, you and I really are drawn to it, because it's just something that you'd want to live in. It's not not a museum.
Exactly.
It's very nice, but it's not. It's comfortable, right? You'd want to spend your time there.
Yeah. And say as the theme continues, the actors are so great. I love Maureen O'Hara so much.
Yeah.
And I love her in just so many things, and she's just absolutely fantastic in this film.
I mean, when she like busts out singing, she's like la di dum dee.
Their song from when they dated, yeah.
And when she finally decides to, kind of not be so conservative or frumpy, and then she just, that green dress is such a knockout that she wear anyway. She's fantastic.
Dad, Charles Ruggles, who plays the father, who's brilliant.
Yes,
he's like, I commend you, right? I don't know what he says. It's something like, it's courageous of you to, wear the old style, like, it's a woman of your age, coming into maturity or whatever he says, and he's like, oh, that's terrible, and he winks at Haley Mills, like, I got in her head. She's gonna go look, put on like
great character,
a better hairdo or something. But yeah, I mean, if you watch one thing I like this for every film, but like when there are special bonus features for a film, kind of behind the scenes, it's always fun to watch. This film is no exception, and it is something you're going to want to see if you haven't seen before. They show how they do the twins. They show how they do. That's mostly the focus of the kind of the behind the scenes mini documentary that they do, like on the DVD bonus features. They show how they use, like Walt had all these really cool ways of mixing in different techniques, so you don't get used to the same technique. Like on Mary Poppins, we had that discussion on a previous episode, but like the effects in Mary Poppins, you can't just always have, like something hanging from a wire, because then it becomes obvious. You got to change it immediately to another sort of effect. And they did that with here. They had a body double. So Haley Mills had a body double, a girl named Susan Henning, who was almost identical to Haley Mills in height and build and facial structure and everything. You could tell they're not the same, they're not sisters, but for most of the shots, you're going to see in camera both of the actresses. Sadly, Susan Henning got no credit for it, because they wanted to give credit to, they didn't want to like spoil the illusion, so they gave it to Haley Mills for both parts. But Susan Henning and Haley Mills would switch parts every time they wanted to film one of the girls. And so when you see the side view of one of the girls, or the back of her head, or something where her face is a little obscured, it's generally going to be Susan Henning. And you will see in some parts where they're kind of fighting, or they're rolling around, or there are some shots where you can actually see Susan Henning's face, and you can tell it's not Haley Mills. However, it's done so well and so convincingly that the average viewer is not going to notice any of that stuff. And of course, they did the split screen where they covered up half of the camera, and they would film Haley Mills on one side, and incidentally, they would put Susan Henning in the other part, so they could play off of each other. They could talk to each other, and then they would switch places. Now, fun fact, when they're in the tent and they're figuring out that they are sisters for the first time, and they're starting to be friendly with each other for the first time, and the gust of wind and the rain comes in and kind of destroys the pictures on the wall and everything, and they start to piece together, birthday and mom, dad, everything, there are a couple of shots where the shoes switch places. Like the two girls didn't put on the correct shoes. Like
continuity error.
yeah, it's a continuity error that I always look for because my aunt one time showed me that when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So the two girls who were really good friends on set and played both parts. Both of them had to learn the lines for both girls, and both of them had to act out every scene pretty much as both girls, which is no small feat. Anyway, they have those little things you can look for.
That is so cool, Mitch. I still am impressed with how well that effect works. When the two Haley Mills are on screen together. That seems like it was such an inventive thing, and probably I'm sure there's some other films that used it, but wow, I think it's still really effective.
Really effective.
Haley Mills is so cute.
I thought it was cool too in that I think if it was the same one that I watched that because back then credits were not like they are now where like everything gets listed. You saw the titles at the beginning and then there were very few credits at the end. And so Walt kind of not wanting to spoil the surprise and also like wanting to have that little gimmick where he's like starring Haley Mills and Haley Mills, like he was trying to do that whole thing, but like still treating Susan so well on set and like making sure that she understands that she's like a really important part of this film. And like I just felt like he really went out of his way to make her feel like she was a part of the process, and I thought that was cool.
You're right, and that bonus content makes that very clear. And the two girls have kept in touch, and Walt and everybody on the set were just as kind to Haley to Susan as they were to Haley. So yeah, very very well worth the watch if you want to go back and find some of that behind the scenes stuff.
That's why I don't say a word. Not a single word.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Lily.
I was just quoting what was the verbena, I don't say a word, not a single word.
None of mine, never mind. It's none of my business. I don't say a word because she figures it out, right? Yes. The housekeeper figures out.
Yes, she tells her everything.
It's almost as if you were, oh, that's impossible.
Yeah, of course, it's none of mine, never mind.
And my wife always and I argue that because I think that Verbena, the housekeeper, and the ranch hand guy are married because at the end they're like holding hands or something during the wedding sequence. My wife's like, no, they're not. They're not. There's nothing there. But just watch it and you'll see that I'm right.
There's a budding romance.
quick little tidbit. My grandmother always was convinced that John Wayne played the father, the Brian Keith role. And all of us would say, no, you're out of your mind. That is not John Wayne. She says, no, it absolutely is. This is pre-internet, so there was no way to like. And so we got out the tape and we showed her that that's not John Wayne. And by then, my mother had bet her mother, my grandmother, a dress. You would buy me a new dress if I am right. And my grandmother said, you're going to be buying me a new dress if I am right. Kind of a silly little wager. And so we pulled out the tape. We showed Grandma that it's Brian Keith, not John Wayne, of course. And my mother got a dress out of it.
Yeah, getting confused with like The Quiet Man or some other, John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara film.
Right.
Every line would be low and slow.
Yep.
Oh, that's perfect. What a great pick. Great pick, Mitch. Well, my next pick is another animated film from that I love pretty much, I guess, my whole life is The Jungle Book.
Yes.
Yeah.
From 1967. So I just love everything about this movie. A few years ago, I if I can go, I love going to the Turner Classic Movie Classic Film Festival that
you're good at that.
Run every year in California.
So cool.
And this is pre-COVID, if I'm not mistaken. But one year they screened The Jungle Book. So occasionally they'll still screen some Disney movies.
Oh, no way.
At this film festival. Yeah, and they had Floyd Norman there, it
was cool, way.
Because they typically try to bring somebody, who's worked on the film,
to
talk about it. But the TCM primetime host, his name is Ben Mankiewicz. He introduced the film, and he just said, "Get ready for 80 minutes of joy." And I just thought that was like the perfect way to describe this film, because I really think that's what it is.
Yes.
It's maybe not necessarily a perfect film or something that, I don't, I think it's pretty well loved, but I know for me, it's just one that I've loved. I just have always loved. My big sister tells me that the Jungle Book soundtrack record, that my parents bought me was in heavy rotation at the house. I bet, yeah. And I think that my siblings were ready to kill me because that's all I wanted to listen to. I don't remember any of that, but I have to rely on what they told me. But I just remember it's like I can't even remember my life without it, and I love it so much.
Oh, that's so. I believe it. I mean, that's great soundtrack. I listen to it regularly on my phone. George Bruns.
Yeah,
Sherman Brothers.
Oh, don't you love the background music in it?
Yeah, just that kind of like
soundtrack. Yeah,
jungly kind of hint of jungle music, but just it's just great. And I keep saying that the voice actors make a big difference, but in this film, it has a star-studded cast of just wonderful voice actors.
Well, and I think it's one of those films that really shows how, like, Walt Disney had that ability to, he just knew the right sound and he knew the right feeling. And, when the songs weren't working out, he was just like, we're going to keep bare necessities, but like, I need the Sherman Brothers in here, and he made sure. And I love this story that the Sherman Brothers tell about, what is the name who plays the girl? Father's hunting in the forest.
Oh, at the end,
yeah, and how they had her just kind of do a quick demo, and then Walt's like, "Well, who is she? She should do it." And because he knew the sound, and he knew how to put everything together in the right way to make. He knew what he was after. Even in the beginning when he was like, "All right, have any of you read Kipling's book?" Okay, great. Don't, because we're not doing it like that.
It kind of has nothing to do with the book.
Yeah. He's just like, he had a vision and he knew what he wanted to do, and he did. And
Walt was the one that figured out the ending with the little girl, because they didn't know how to get him out of the jungle into the man village, right? And Walt was like, put a little girl there, and according to what I've watched, right? And that is just part of Walt's brilliance. Like he was like, it's the most simple solution to our problem, and it's the best, and it really is.
It's the best. I love the ending. I mean, I love everything about it, but I love that ending.
You have an entire 90 minutes of a boy who's raised in the jungle, who wants nothing to do with any other lifestyle. He wants to live in that jungle forever, and everything that they sing and do and talk about and look at and everywhere they go, it all says, "Hey, this is the place for you to be. This is the only place you'd ever want to live as a little boy." And then in 5 seconds, he sees a little girl getting water, and he's going, "Oh!" It sparks his curiosity, and it's nothing weird. It's just like, okay, and you get it. The animation and the music and the timing of the whole thing, you 100% buy into it. That, okay, Mowgli, this is what will get Mowgli to give the village a chance, even though he adores everything else that he's experienced in his life thus far. And that's just Walt Disney for you. I mean, who else could have? Yeah, it's just he
was so good at pantomime. Like it was, he can do so much with just like him. Suddenly now he's fumbling around, and I mean, it was so good.
Yeah.
In fact, it was one of the things that made them the most sad about the quote live action remake.
Gee,
you kind of missed that. Anyways,
I had high hopes for that, but then,
there was some interesting technical work, I think, on that. But overall, it's like really,
it's hard. You just can't beat the original. The King Louis.
Sequence, you love King Louis.
Where they're like
King Louis.
They're like the monkeys are running around, and he's like singing about the fire, the flower, and the man's red flower, and all that.
Well, and didn't they do the scatting? They weren't at the same place at the same time, so they actually did kind of like a call and response and sent it back and forth or something like
Did they
that,
really?
didn't they?
Probably.
That I don't know that story, but that definitely I bet happened. And isn't it just like fantastic how well it came together? And
so good. Yes. Yeah, because they were like, we just it's got to be more natural. I think the way it was written, they kind of didn't like it, so they're like, yeah, we're just gonna do this like call and response scatting thing, and it worked out. I mean, that song is so classic.
Oh yeah,
and just that whole sequence is so much fun.
Yeah, it really is.
I think it's one of the most beautiful films in every aspect. I mean, in terms of, like we said, music and acting, the animation is some of the best that the Nine Old Men and other animators who don't get as much credit, who deserve credit, did. They just did some terrific animation. They did and part of that is, I remember I'd pause it and like rewind it, like pause it, rewind, pause, rewind, and just study each little movement. And then I'd do the same thing for the background art because the background art's really pretty. But this is one of the few films during that time period they did the Xerox transfer technique, right? So they developed this for the 101 Dalmatians, preceded Jungle Book, because they needed something. They needed a way to kind of like be more efficient in their animation, because previous to Dalmatians, you would have the animator sketch on paper with pencil. You'd have the ink and paint ladies that worked in the ink and paint department put the clear sheet over the top of the clear animation cell, trace the line work with ink or paint, turn that over, and then put the color in. That was a very laborious process. And so they developed this process where they could scan the pencil drawings and then print it directly onto the cell, which was unheard of at the time. It was like Xerox technology that is so common today was very new, and it took up like this big room. It wasn't just like a copy machine. It was like this big thing where they had to like scan every single thing. But this way they didn't have to trace the line work onto the cells anymore. And now when you're drawing 101 puppies and all the stuff that's going on in the spots and everything with the Dalmatians, now you're cutting out one step between like animation and ink and paint, and it saved a ton of money. And they continued this with Jungle Book and with the Robin Hood and the Rescuers and a few other ones, and then they retired it eventually when the computer animation, computer techniques, and other things kind of came into play. But the point I'm making with all that is, you watch the Jungle Book and you can see the actual animators' sketches, which is not typical in, you're seeing a fine, clean line normally. That's a tracing of the animators' pencil sketches that are rougher. You're going to see little construction lines and little kind of like sketchy stuff. You'll see different animators have different amount of sketchiness in their style of drawing, and all of that comes through in the Jungle Book in a beautiful way. And I really like the style. I'm a big fan of the style. Not everybody is, but I really love the style of.
I love it too. Yeah, I know that not everybody appreciates or enjoys it, but I love it, and I love it through that whole time period too. I particularly love it in the Rescuers. Yeah. I think that's so effective. And one of the sad, I guess, that's maybe melancholy, or I'm not sure what the right word is, bittersweet, is that it's the last film that Walt Disney really was personally involved. Last animated film that Walt Disney was personally involved with.
Yeah.
Which I didn't quite know until I was an adult, right? I didn't know it. That didn't register at all to me when I was a little kid listening to that record over and over. But
yeah, so sad. But it's got him
his touch
throughout. He was focused on other things at the time, so he was, but he was still devoted to the animation. Of course, that's kind of his bread and butter, and you can tell in the film that it was him.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love the Beatles?
The vultures.
The Beatles vultures.
Those are so
good. We're your friends.
Yeah.
Friend to the bitter end.
Yeah, it's so great.
So good.
Yeah.
Buzzy, Flaps, Ziggy, and Dizzy.
That's right.
I don't know that by memory. I looked it up, but they're just Great little
with the Beatles hair. I mean, everything about it is just
yeah.
It's such a fun movie. Truly, 80 plus minutes of pure joy.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we are back to Lily for your final pick of our discussion here.
Third
Lily,
and
share with us
final.
what you picked.
Okay, well, I knew that we had decided when we were trying to narrow down what would be included and what wouldn't be included. We decided that we would include Pixar.
Yes, for sure.
And so I knew I had to have a Pixar in here, and there's several Pixar films that I really appreciate for very specific reasons. But I rewatched Soul, which I loved the first time that I saw it, and I had some things just like stirring in me, and I was like, I feel like Soul is the thing that really like speaks to this. And I rewatched it, and I'm just like, this film is just it really like the point that they were making with this film was like meant for me. Like it went deep in there, and it just it just really this idea of I love the moment when he ends up finally getting the gig with the band, and he finally ends up playing.
Yes.
And he walks out with Dorothy Williams, and he says, I'm not sure that like this felt the way that I thought, or, this, I'm not really sure anymore. And, I'm not really sure what I want. And in the end, when he sees that the little helicopter leaf, I don't know what those are actually called, but that's what we called them when we were kids.
Yep.
The little helicopter leaf, and he just picks it up and he realizes like life is about nothing more than life. And I think that the moment that he gets that second chance at his life, and she says, what are you going to do with it? And he says, I don't know, but all I know is like I'm going to live it. And I just was like, yes, like that's it. And I just didn't think it speaks to like everyone who was like, I should have been this, I should have been that. Like we all have this plan B that we all thought our life was supposed to be, but like the reality is like you get one life and this is it. And that's plan A. I don't know. It's an amazing point. It's well stated. I mean, let's talk about the cast. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx, right?
Jamie Foxx,
Tina Fey.
Oh yeah, Tina Fey.
Is it Angela Bassett?
Yes.
Who plays Dorothy?
Yes. Daveed Diggs, who plays.
Oh yeah. He's the barber, right?
Oh, the barbershop is my favorite. I love that whole.
He's Joe's like neighborhood frenemy or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's Pete Docter. I mean, just what's not to like, and it's funny. I was talking about this with my sister, and she was like, I mean, it's a good film, but most Pixar films are like you love it as an adult, and the kids love it, and she's like, my kids just they liked it, but they don't really want to watch it again. And I was like, okay, I could see that. Maybe it wasn't as strong of a kids movie, but.
My kids like it.
Do they? Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It's not like their top Pixar film, but they watch it. They like it. They love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was, I just felt like the music, it is very quirky, like the way that they sort of have like psychological interpretations, and the way they like show him going through his memories, and all of those, and actually I love that moment when 22 says, when he says like, oh, these are all like sad memories, like what, who chose these, and she's like, well, you did, like these are your memories. And just sort of realizing like those moments that we thought were like our break moments in our lives, and that really life was just life. And
then we fall into a manhole.
Yeah.
Open hole in the street.
Yeah. And kind of get a wake up call.
Even in the weird part where they're like, in the black sand, and 22 is turning into like a big black blob. But but like even that, I loved the sort of the symbolism there of just like letting those things sort of shroud you and letting that voice in your head just like overtake you. Like it's definitely an abstract. Even everyone
Even the
being
animation's
Jerry, and
abstract.
like all of it. It's weird. I get it. But I felt like they took a risk, and it was a risk that worked for me. I really liked it.
Now, both of you are very, very talented musically. I mean, in many other ways as well. But both Stan and Lily are professional musician, singers, etc. And so I'd imagine that that theme of this like aspiring, very talented musician resonated with you both. I would assume, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll let
and thanks for the kind words, Mitch. I mean, yeah, there was something that really resonated, about the music. And I'm sorry, I was wrong. Is it Questlove who plays the barber? Daveed Diggs plays kind of like his frenemy.
Yes.
Anyway, my bad. But so sorry. I just want to cry out. But just as a, as Lily was saying, the whole part where he figures out, what really what life's so important. That's interesting because I don't necessarily have that experience musically, but I could understand how he could. I mean, there's this thing that like, oh, that's his whole goal, but really, life is maybe something else other than what he was just solely, the music he was solely focusing on.
Yeah.
Well, and the part where they're finding their quote spark.
Yes.
And he's like, well, yeah, my music is my spark. Like it's my passion. And I think it's Jerry that says, oh, you guys and your passion. Like that's not it. Like that's not a spark. And it's just such a good point, because I think that we, and maybe it's, particularly like Western American culture, we're so caught up in like being someone important and like doing something great with our lives, and like find your passion and live your best life. I mean, it's so much, it's like almost so much pressure we put on ourselves to like do something important with our lives. And just I love this idea of like, no, like everything is in a piece of pizza, and everything is in a leaf, and everything is in a child learning how to play a musical instrument. Like everything is right there.
Yeah, I thought they approached those themes without being too sappy or too. Disney can they really kind of pioneered a certain romantic approach to dreams and goals and accomplishments and everything. They did it so well a long time ago, and then they went through this period in recent decades that they kind of made it. I don't know. It's not my favorite when they get too sappy and too weird and fake, and all you have to do is and everything will get better, and like all your dreams will come true. All you have to do is believe. And this one is like,
and you can do it.
Yeah, I'm trying not to quote certain theme park songs. Terrible.
Right.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
But this I think Soul approached it, and it wasn't Disney, and people lumped them together. But Soul is Pixar, different studio, same ownership, but they approached it very well. I thought it was really like, let's take this theme of like trying hard and going after your dream, but not make it too sappy, but also heartwarming and touching at the same time. So good balance.
Lily, this was such an excellent pick. I recently rewatched Soul 2, and I loved it the first time I saw it. And, I've seen it this is probably maybe my third or fourth viewing that I just, had a couple weeks ago. And just so impressed with this movie. I thought you nailed it with the word abstract, because it really is kind of, just the designs are so interesting, but I think that's what makes it work so well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually think, to your point, Mitch, too, it's subtle, actually. Like, the point is actually quite subtle. And even, I'm
You don't get
saying
hit over the head.
Jerry, they're all Jerry, they're all named Jerry, but
Yeah.
you're like the woman, the tall woman, Jerry, she's so like, yeah, well, I don't think so, but like I love like how subtle it is, but she has this wisdom, but it's nothing. It's very simple,
Yeah. It was tastefully done. I liked it.
Yeah. I liked it too. I remember. I think it was when. Remember that one time we got to tour Pixar? I know we've got to do it a couple times, but
Yeah, so
this was pretty much the coolest thing ever.
so cool.
But
yeah, definitely.
When one of our friends there who was giving us the tour, I think they were working on Soul, while we were there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think
and we didn't. I don't think
we
got to see. I don't remember that we got to see any art from it. Maybe we did. Did we? But I mean, that's not necessarily the point. But I remember though our friend was saying that they're working really hard on the story because this is kind of a tricky subject matter, and he, like Pete Docter didn't want to offend anybody,
right.
with this kind of how they're creating like this kind of pre-life and afterlife business,
yeah,
and even the look of the quote unquote souls, was very unique.
Yes.
And I thought that mission accomplished, at least for me. What do you both think about that?
No, I agree, because it's this like, it could be interpreted as like religious. It could be interpreted as non-religious. It's got a good balance. And as a religious person myself, I was not in any way offended by it, and I did not. They weren't trying to push anything either way, in terms of like afterlife and your soul. I think it just like it was abstract enough where it represented so many different things that anybody can get behind, right? It didn't, the person who doesn't have the that belief in the afterlife could really get behind the message of it, and the person who does have that strong conviction about afterlife and purpose of life, et cetera, in a religious way, can really get behind it. So no, I think they walked a fine line really, really well.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lily.
No, that was it.
I mean, of course, I'm just gonna gush about this film, but I loved how in the two, like kind of the pre and afterlife world, and then in the Earth, like current day in New York City. I mean, I just call them the magicians at Pixar, right? I mean, just the art is so stunning and stellar, and they're so different, and also they use different composers. So John Batiste, if I'm not mistaken, was the one who did all of the music on Earth, the jazz music.
Oh yeah.
And then Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were the ones who did the music in the more ethereal kind of music in the pre-life and post-life. And it's, in a lot of ways, when you look at it, it's almost like they were making two different films, just because it looks. But I mean, could they have made New York City look more beautiful? Just the way it was drawn and lit, and it was just stunning. I just think of that one shot where Joe's riding on the train, the above ground train, and the sunset, or the sun is setting over the city, and I just marvel at the beauty of the art.
I agree. Very, very beautifully rendered, animated, stage, and lit.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a render nerd. Like, if you go back to the original Pixar films and compare them to like the most recent ones, big difference. And this one is just, I can't imagine it getting any better than that. The way that it's been made.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
Wonderful pick, Lily.
Yeah.
And a cool one. I was just saying, for Pixar, I really love that you picked that. All right, Mitch, what's your final film of the three we're talking about from each of us?
My number 3 would be the 1963 animated feature, The Sword in the Stone. Now, this wasn't a major blockbuster success. It wasn't critically acclaimed like a lot of the Disney films were. However, it's one that I think holds up well. I know I have talked to many, many people in recent years, full-grown adults, who say that it is their favorite or in their top favorite animated films of all time.
Nice.
It's interesting when, like on social media or elsewhere, you can when you talk about it and the subject comes up, so many people will come out of the woodworks and say, I absolutely love this film. It was my childhood favorite, and I still watch it today. And it's one of those kind of Rocketeer films where a lot of people aren't even very familiar with it. They don't even know it exists, or if they do, they just don't know what it is. But when they watch it and they really kind of get into it, it's a very entertaining film. The basic premise of it is that, like, you're introduced to this concept at the very beginning of like this this sword has appeared in like medieval London, and it's stuck in this anvil, this stone, and it's in the kind of center of town, and it's just like appears there, and there's an inscription that says, that whoever pulls this sword from the stone is the rightful heir to the throne. The king has died. There's no heir. And we're left with, England is left without a king. And this is the way that we're going to get our king. And so there's this kind of really cool setup in the very beginning. But then the entire movie has nothing to do with that until the very end. It just kind of like sets the stage that, hopefully one day somebody will be able to pull the sword from the stone. And then you go into this story of a young boy, an orphan boy, kind of very simple, very kind of basic orphan boy who just goes about his very simple life, and then runs into a very intelligent magical wizard. And the wizard, Merlin, sees a lot of potential in this boy. For some reason, there's something about this boy that's going to be remarkable, in the future. And so he sets out to educate the boy. The Wart, it's his nickname. The boy named Wart doesn't know how to read or write. He knows very little about the world around him. And so Merlin introduces him to things like education. He turns Merlin himself and Wart, into fish for a whole sequence where they swim around the castle moat and they get chased by a barracuda. He turns himself and Wart into squirrels for a whole sequence where they kind of jump around the treetops and they learn about gravity and all these different kind of science-y things and about the world around them. He tells them about the future because Merlin can kind of see into the future. He turns Wart into a bird, and then his sidekick, Merlin, his pet is an owl, a talking owl. It's not a world where animals talk, but this particular animal does, because he's like the owl pet of the wizard. So he's very highly educated, and his name is Archimedes, and Archimedes and Wart as a bird, they go out and they fly around, and it's just like, as a kid, you're watching this film and you go, okay, there's nothing too heavy for me. It's just a boy in the sky and the bird, an owl, going on these little adventures, and they're animals, and it's charming and fun, and there's not a lot of weight to it, you would think. And then at the end, it turns out that it was always kind of destined for this boy, whose name is Arthur. It's kind of his destiny that he's going to be the king of England. He's going to pull the sword from the stone, the King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And that's the last few seconds of the film that you kind of piece that together. There's a scene before that Merlin is battling. It's like a battle of wits. It's a wizard's duel between himself and another wizard, like a witch character, kind of the villain of the film, but not really. She's not a villain. Her name is Madame Mim, and she's not all that bad, but she's kind of bad and kind of witchy. Mm-hmm. And they have to turn themselves into different animals and fight it out. And it's just beautifully animated sequence of animals going after each other, and they kind of look like their character, right? The animal, if Merlin turns himself into a goat, it looks like a goat version of Merlin, same color.
Yeah, it's like blue in color, right? Or it's got like some kind of shade of blue, like
Merlin's a little bit, and
like Merlin's cloak.
Yeah, and like she's turning into animals that are like pink and purple, like her character, and she starts to break all the rules, and she turns into a big, like a dragon, and anyway, it's like it's one of those films where if you're a boy in the 1980s growing up and you have only the handful of movies in your home collection, and that's one of them, and you're just watching it on a very regular basis, you just get really lost in the whole idea of like being something that you could never be. Like my wife always talks about, she does like the impression of the squirrels, because there's like this little girl squirrel that falls in love with a Wart.
The poor little girl squirrel.
Yeah, like both Merlin and Wart are squirrels, and they both run into like female squirrels of the same age, and so this little cute little girl squirrel just falls in love with the squirrel version of Wart, and like he can't explain to her that he's just a boy. Like she doesn't even speak, like she just like makes these cute little noises. And then Merlin has that old lady kind of like squirrel that's more his age, and he's like all angry, and like she's all mad at him, and when they the whole thing is just, it's full of charm and everything, and it's another film, yet another on our lists that doesn't get enough credit, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Especially with the, it's, it takes you into these dreams you have as a kid where you're like, wouldn't it be cool to be a fish? Wouldn't it be cool to be a bird? Wouldn't it, and you sort of, you imagined those things. And then, this film is like, well, yeah, this is what that would be like. And, in the terms of education, those worlds are not all they're cracked up to be. There's positives and there's negatives with every situation.
Right.
I think it's great. It's absolutely great film.
I don't know if there's a film that I love the production design more than this film. And I guess just like the general art direction. I just think that the characters are so perfectly designed.
Yes.
And I like Merlin, really quite simple, with just like that tunic or whatever you call it he's wearing, and his wizard's hat and that great shade of blue, but it's perfection,
It is. I agree.
And little Wart, is so great. And I absolutely love the look of it. And I also think too, that scene at the end when, well, I guess two things, that wizard's duel.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, that is just like the greatest.
I mean, the animators,
one of the all-time greats.
It was a tough thing, I imagine, because they had to create characters, like so many different characters, and like animate them. So instead of just like animating Merlin for the whole feature, now you're animating him as a dozen different animals. Anyway, keep going.
Yes. And I always just, the whole thing just even thinking about it just makes me smile so much, because it's just so endlessly clever as well, in that how they're trying to outsmart each other, like which animal is going to win, over the other. And I ultimately just love how it turns out, how, Merlin turns himself into a virus. It makes you sick. That's so smart.
Didn't even know that stuff back then. It was like, he knew because he's smart.
It's like, and then the scene when Arthur, / Wart pulls the sword out of the stone.
Yeah.
Perfection. Again, just the way it's lit, that beautiful stone wall in the background, and just the way the anvil is and everything.
Choirs in heaven are like starting to sing as
yes.
like it's meant to be.
It's really, it's really special. Now, Mitch, I hope everybody's following, Imagineering Disney on social media. But speaking of the sword and the stone, they should be following you right now, because you've been posting some really cool art of stuff that you've been working on. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what you're doing.
For fun, occasionally throughout my life, I've kind of put together little attraction ideas for theme parks, for Disney theme parks. And I've always wanted a dark ride of the Sword and the Stone, because I think much like Alice in Wonderland, like we talked about, Jungle Book would be another one. Some of these animated films would make perfect dark rides. Dark rides being like enclosed ride with a track system and little vehicles, or a boat system. And I chose a boat system for this one because I want it to be kind of a slower moving adventure. And so I took the basic layout of the Florida Magic Kingdom. It's a Small World, the show building and the actual path of the water, like the boat ride, and the same dimensions and everything. And I just replaced everything, like kind of gutted out all the sets, and then put in inserted in different scenes from the Sword and the Stone. So I've started to animate it a little bit to where you can kind of ride through it a little bit. It's still got a long ways to go, but it's all laid out already, and each scene has kind of been determined within the structure of the building and the layout of the ride. But yeah, I've been posting some things where, like for instance, you go through Merlin's house, and there's that great scene where he decides to pack up everything he owns and move to the castle because that's where Wart lives. It's like this old, rundown, aging castle, no royalty or anything. It's just like some caretakers and whoever his guardians live there. So he's got to pack up, and he's going to use magic to fit everything he owns, which is a lot, books and all this cool like inventions and stuff and furniture, all compacted into this one little handbag. And it's just this great music from the Sherman Brothers. And so I kind of animated a little bit of that, how it might be if it were like animatronic form, just kind of simple figures, simple movements, and just kind of a slow moving boat ride through that scene of the movie. And then you go into the next scene. And yeah, if you want to check it out, it's Imagineering Disney .com. That's the website, but the artwork's mostly posted on Instagram and Twitter.
It's super cool, Mitch. I just love it. I love that how you've got the flume going, that you're actually like going under the stream of objects, that he's miniaturizing into the bag. You just picture, I can just hear the music, the higgitus figgitus. And it's super cool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a really kind of a labor of love, and will never get built. And people are saying, and I'm very flattered, people are saying, can we start a letter writing campaign? How do we get a hold of Disney? And the truth of the matter is, it's just not something that's going to be a priority for them, at least not right now. Maybe one day. I think Paris should do it, or Tokyo or something. But until then, we can just kind of live through 3D generated computer imagery.
Well, and I do think it's sad that there's not more of a tribute to Sword of the Stone in the parks. I know there's the sword that's in front of the carousel, which they have considered removing multiple times, because
don't do it.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad traffic jam because there's not enough walkway space around the carousel, and so when they do shows there, it blocks it up. So they like the idea of doing the show, but then the show creates the problem. So
that's too bad, because it's not very big. The footprint of it is.
They just leave the sword there, and they don't even have the show, which is also sad.
Which is right, exactly.
So, I always thought, at least at Walt Disney World, the stage would they have a like Merida meet and greets there now? That stage that's like on the side of the castle.
Yes,
I always thought that would be a great spot for
a
churchyard and a Merlin show, something like that.
One of my concepts I did when I worked at Disney, they had that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea lagoon when they had that ride, and that lagoon sat empty for years, and it's a really big piece of real estate in Fantasyland in Magic Kingdom. Now it's large enough that now they have like a whole nother like land, almost like an extension of Fantasyland with multiple restaurants and rides. I had designed an idea that I called the Streets of London, because you have these different sort of architectures from Europe throughout Fantasyland, and it kind of has a progression. Well, if you have the whole London section, you can have dark rides for, you could have like a Mary Poppins, you could have, and then it would slowly transition into a forest where you have Sword and the Stone. You could have Robin Hood, Dalmatians. You could, take your pick. You could have 2 or 3, 4 different dark rides in that area that are all set in London. And as you get deeper into the streets of London, you would the style would change subtly into the specific period of that film. So Dalmatians would have kind of like this mid 20th century, whereas Sword and Stone would be more medieval, and it would have that like slow transition as you go, and it would be very seamless. And well, that was my idea for that property, and everybody was coming up with ideas for that property at the time, but they landed on something different. But I just think it would make a good ride.
It would.
Well, and then hello, boat ride. As we've discussed amongst ourselves many times.
Yes. Not enough boat rides out there.
Yeah, always need more boat rides. And what a great pick, Mitch. I just, that's really, I think it's an underrated film, and one that I think more people would enjoy if they'd watch it. It's on Disney Plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
I agree.
Good stuff.
Okay, Stan, right, you got one more, right? And then,
one more. Yeah, so I was
finale.
I wanted to find a live action or select a live action pick. And there were a few that I was considering. One of them was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is not the one, just because I think that's such a cool film and holds up incredibly well, I think. And just a great action movie and great actors. Kirk Douglas is in it, James Mason. But and then I was just also kind of thinking about just some of my childhood favorites, when I was a kid. Like, I loved The Love Bug, and I loved just kind of those silly comedies, from the 70s, all the stuff after Walt died, but still just were movies that I loved as a kid. But I ended up picking Tron from the original Tron from 1982.
Yeah. So good.
And, I love Tron so much, and I respect it so much. I mean, I kind of think that it's in a way, maybe it's not the most exciting. I mean, it maybe drags a little bit or whatnot, but still, the visuals are such a knockout, and I think they were so creative in what they were trying to do.
Oh, it's groundbreaking.
With it, yes, really groundbreaking, and there's no way that they would. I mean, I know that they were able to make the sequel finally in 2010, and they're supposed to make Tron 3.
Are they really?
Yes, it was cool. Announced, and they're ready to go. They were going to start shooting in August. And then because of this actor and writer strikes, it's been on hold.
Oh, you're kidding. I didn't
and I'm like, dang it. Now I'm all like being all paranoid, like, oh, they're going to cut it. They're not going to do it. And who knows if it's going to be any good. But they're even making it. Makes me so stoked. I fingers crossed. But anyway, I digress.
I have mixed feelings about it because I'm like, first of all, I don't know where they take the story from here.
Because, I know. See, exactly. Exactly. I know.
But then it's also like, we want more Tron. So,
I share your thoughts. I'm all worried, but then thinking, well, maybe it's going to be good, but who knows? But it's Tron, more Tron.
We just got to get more people on that roller coaster, Let's just keep making.
That's right, exactly.
Disney does not make bad sequels, guys. They always have. By the time they get to number 3 or 4, they're
the best.
They're so good.
Totally. Toy Story 17,
Pirates 6 or whatever. Pirates 4.
Oh, That's right. High School Musical.
Wow, you got there. Wow, you went all the way there.
High School Musical 3. I did some of the marketing for that.
Did you?
For High School Musical 3, yeah. I take no offense to your comments because I didn't even see the movie.
No offense, man. Had I known,
they did not let me screen the movie.
The height
when I was doing the marketing
career.
for it. They wouldn't let us see the movie when we did the marketing for it, which is kind of weird. But then I did see the movie and I thought,
yeah, like, oh dear.
Anyway, Tron.
And High School Musical was filmed at my high school. Have we talked about this?
Yeah, East High.
Yeah, East High School. Yeah,
you went
Salt
to
Lake
East
City.
High, so that you see a lot of familiar places, huh?
For a while, it was like the most famous high school, in the world. But they used to offer tours and stuff. I don't know.
Did they really?
There were so many people, that wanted to come see the school.
You should have been an extra in it. Like a teacher or something.
Exactly, with a teacher.
Yeah.
The janitor. But back to Tron. I saw Tron when I was, speaking of East High School, when I was in school at East High, and it blew my mind. I just thought this was like the coolest movie I'd ever seen, and to see it on the big screen and it was so groundbreaking. In fact, you just kind of couldn't believe that what you were seeing. Just the way the image and the cool electronic music and everything. And then also, there was a Tron video game that was like at the video arcade.
Oh yeah, like on the arcade console, like a upright, right?
So, and that was I remember that that was my friends and I really liked that a lot too. That Tron game, it was really cool. You play like light cycles, as I recall, or maybe there was some multiple games that you could play within it, but you had that's like this big giant glowing it's like this a joystick controller.
Nice.
That kind of like was neon Tron aesthetic. But anyway, what a cool movie, what a cool experience, and so admired just the technology that went into it, because I think it had like 15 full minutes of stuff like computer generated imagery, which was a first.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then the whole technique they used to get how they filmed, when they were in the computer world, how they filmed, Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner or whatever, Cindy Morgan, etc. They had a black background, and then filmed them in these kind of white and black suits, right? Had all
it wasn't
the
even
designs on it, and
post production, right?
Yeah, post production, and they went like almost like they animated. They colored.
They did like frames, like backlight or backlit compositing.
Yeah, they did that backlighting technique,
which is it's layered from what I understand, and you could kind of see it in the film. Like you could see this kind of interesting layers where they would say, okay, we need a certain exposure for the little circuitry details on the costume that's going to be different than the face exposure, and we need like every part of it needed its own kind of layer.
Yeah,
and so it was very, very like painstaking, long process, and people were painting these like printouts and stuff. I mean, really cool result, but from what they say, it was just like huge labor.
Yeah, labor intensive, super expensive, I think, right? Too, like you
got matte paintings, which was a really cool effect. I mean, going way back. Speaking of 20,000 Leagues, Peter Ellen Shaw would do those great matte paintings that would go in like in between the camera and the actors.
Yes,
and the scenes, and then they would do his son. It kind of took over the
Harrison,
reins, right? And did a lot for Tron, and he had come off of Star Wars, and he had done a lot of. He did a lot for Empire Strikes Back, and I think all three of the original Star Wars. But he was like a really key person in Tron because he like knew all these cool camera effects and like traditional artistry kind of things, and how to put them together in camera and post production. So really a really impressive film technically.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, little teenager Stan, it just totally blew my mind. That was actually quite a summer because if I'm not mistaken, just like a couple weeks after Tron came out, then Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extraterrestrial, came out. And I think that E.T. kind of blew everything out of the water that summer. That's the movie that just everybody went to.
Yeah.
And I think Tron kind of got lost in that shuffle, even though I don't know necessarily Tron could have been a blockbuster, but it was such a unique film that I think still a lot of people could have gone. And plus, it's a fun movie to watch.
So you're in your high school. Did the other students get excited like that, like you did, or did your friends?
I went with some friends, and who were also kind of a film nerd, like myself. And I remember we all really liked it. Like we were all like, "This is so cool!" This movie was.
You were probably amazing. The perfect age for that, like a high schooler, like college age, or whatever.
Age for it, just because it's such a cool adventure. Computers were novel, I mean, they were. And
computer graphics, like animated light cycles,
computer graphics.
Well, and I was gonna say too, if you're a gamer, if you're a hacker, if you are a programmer in the 80s, And I mean, even since then, I mean, isn't it your ultimate dream to like be in the game, to be in, like, that's like what you imagine, and then it's like, so it's just cool that there's a storyline where it's like, well, what if that really happened and what would that be like? And I love how it's like you're the user, like it's just so great, it's just, I love it. I love that aspect of it. It's got the programmer inside jokes.
I was watching some, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was watching some of the kind of interviews from the time, from the people who made it, and they go to Disney, and it wasn't like a Disney initiated like idea. Like, it didn't originate at Disney. It was like external, and they kind of shopped it around and went to Disney. And you got all these old guys at Disney going like, yeah, we have no idea what you're talking about. What is this? Going into a computer, or you're going into a game? What is this? But they had enough, I don't know, they had enough sense to say, okay, this is going to resonate with this generation. This generation, it's these kids are familiar with computers. They see the potential in the computers. They're familiar with video games. They're very popular video games right now. Like, we're going to be able to reach our younger audience that we haven't been able to reach super well in recent years. I mean, we're talking the 70s, late 70s. You've got these other studios that are really, you mentioned E.T., Star Wars, and others, really have attracted this age group, like this demographic that you were, Stan.
Yeah.
I was born in '80, so I was really little when it came out. But luckily, Disney, the powers that be, said, you know what, let's go for it. And they had a lot of people, kind of, including Harrison Allenshaw. They had Sid Mead and a lot of different people that were like, behind it. Like, okay, we're going to champion this. We're going to get behind this. And we're just going to go for it. And I think that passion and that the vision that they were able to catch on to, those influential people, allowed for studio executives to approve it, to greenlight it and say, let's do it.
Yeah. So I don't think it was like a great box office hit. As I mentioned, it really got overshadowed with E.T. and whatnot, and maybe almost too obscure, to be hit. But it's been, I think, it's, as we probably all can attest to, it's been incredibly influential.
Yeah.
Right.
Cult following for sure.
Yes, exactly. Cult classic for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you could almost put it in the same category as Mary Poppins, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Song of the South, Pete's Dragon, some of these that were combining animation with live action characters, but took it to a whole nother level. Like, this isn't just like hand painted animation, superimposed with an actor, which is impressive in and of itself. But this is like the future. This is so incredible. Even today, I think a lot of those graphics hold up. Now, it's old. You know that it's like from the 80s just by looking at it, but it holds up to where you're not even sure how they did it. And this is 40-something years later. You look at it and go, I'm not even entirely sure how they pulled that off, because I don't know. It's that impressive. I really do think it holds up on a technical level and on like a special effects level. And in some ways, it out innovates even the Star Wars special effects that are always kind of the standard that everybody looks to during this time period. And they innovated a lot, of course, and they really. But Tron did things that I don't know if have ever been done since. Like, did they? There's certain things that people are like, that is so awesome, but I'm not even going to try it, because
exactly.
That's like, you did it well, you mastered it, good job, Tron. And so it has kind of that I don't know, it's unique in that way.
Yeah, definitely a favorite, and just thought I had to include it. That's
I'm glad you did.
When I was hanging out with my friends as a kid, we would all walk. If we were ever walking in a line, like all of us just side by side walking, one of us inevitably would just quick turn right in front of the other one, like stopping in the direction, like Tron.
90-degree angle, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Like your little light cycle.
Awesome.
You're dead.
That's
so dumb.
But still so fun.
I'll tell you guys, I'm glad every one of your picks. I said to myself, oh, I'm glad they picked that one. I really am. And when I saw Tron on there, I'm like, okay, now I haven't watched it in a while. I'm gonna watch it again. I'm gonna really get into it, and it was just a treat. along with all the other ones too. So it was good to revisit all 9 of these films.
Yeah, these have been so great. I really love and appreciate the picks that you brought in. This discussion has just been a delight. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was fun.
This has just been a blast. I too bad we have to end. I want to do 9 more.
Yeah,
it would not be hard to come up with 9 more. We can do it.
I know, right?
If you're up for it any other time, I think we would really have a good time.
Thanks, friends. This has been a blast. Thank you. Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Huge thanks again to Mitch and Lilly from ImagineeringDisney.com for joining me. It was such a blast talking to them. Links and more information about the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my blog at moviespastandpresent.com. Subscribe to the podcast where you listen to podcasts, and follow me on Instagram. I'm at moviespap, as in past and present. As always, I hope you'll enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be safe out there and dedicate yourself to the truth.